Odo's in Quark's for one of his regular bouts of verbal sparring and to see what he can learn. There's a docked Miradoran ship that Odo refers to as a raider, something Quark tries to laugh off as exaggeration whilst also claiming he knows nothing about it. There's another curiosity too, a new guy brought back from the Gamma Quadrant by a Klingon explorer ship. Maybe their somewhat boisterous nature is why he's acting so reserved and avoiding eye contact. Quark suggests the official Federation welcome might have frightened him, what with all those people and formality, and that makes the ever-suspicious Odo wonder what he's hiding to be scared of a welcoming committee. Some aliens, a pair of twins, pop in from the ship Quark says he has no connection to, and they nod his way in passing. Odo thinks this suspicious too, though possibly just to test the waters. It works, and Quark is loud in his protestations, which means he's knee-deep in some dodgy shit. The mystery guy leaves, possibly to get away from all the noise, and Odo watches him go. Not for long, though, as he sees a chance to sneak into the meeting Quark said isn't happening, carried in there by Rom disguised as a glass. The twins have brought a purple jewelled egg, and Quark's very taken with it. Such a shame that the buyer he'd lined up pulled out after news about the theft of an identical egg started to spread. Smells like Quark trying to scam them into dropping their price, and one of the twins doesn't seem impressed either, but the whole thing turns to shit when the suspicious lad from downstairs enters with a TV remote and waves it about menacingly. It would appear this boy's going to be important, so let's glue a name on him from the wheel. He'll now be called... Dark Helmet by Obsidian Black. Dark Helmet is as competent as his namesake and stutters out an apologetic robbery. Quark's reaction implies the whole thing might be staged, as there isn't quite the same level of pleading that he normally shows when in danger. Whatever the cause of the robbery, it goes straight down the shitter when one of the twins throws the tabletop at Dark Helmet. Glass Odo shatters on a wall, and that's enough to convince him that maybe he should stop being a glass. He's busy reconstituting himself when the pooping starts. Dark Helmet dodges a shot and proves the TV remote was a gun after all, pooping some yellow onto the twin who just tried to murderize him. Odo's sufficiently solid to intervene now, grabbing Dark Helmet as the twin who tossed a table goes over to his brother, who we discover is now his ex-brother, as the guy has carked it. We're in Odo's office, sorting out the aftermath. A live twin is a touch upset about dead twin, not least of which because his people place a significant emphasis on twins and consider them to be part of the same self. In a way, Dark Helmet just half-killed him. And he claims they had nothing to do with the egg theft either, one in which a couple of people got murderized, saying they bought it from a passing trader. Sisko sends him back to his ship, probably because we can't actually prove they did anything wrong, though that might change given his promise of revenge on Dark Helmet. Quark's also in the clear for the moment. Rom blunders into denying Quark had anything to do with the attempted robbery when Odo points out the gun Dark Helmet used was Ferengi, confirming the whole thing was staged, but there's no proof, so that just leaves us with Dark Helmet himself. He doesn't seem that arsed about having killed a guy, or half a guy? That's a thought. Would this even be murder based on the victim's culture about twins? Maybe they have a specific crime for it. Homicide, perhaps. Regardless, he doesn't give much of a shit. Sisko says there'll be a trial, which is at least better than Dark Helmet's used to, as he says his people don't usually bother with such formalities, the implication being they're rather draconian. Here's something interesting, though. As he's complimenting Odo's skills, he says he doesn't know of another changeling with so varied a repertoire. Odo seizes on the possibility of Dark Helmet knowing another member of his species, even as he suspects it's just bullshit to draw him in. Still, the price of hearing more is just some food, so where's the harm? As Dark Helmet is the first of his species to arrive through the wormhole, we should probably make an effort on finding his people and letting them know what happened. Rather than be pissed off, Kira thinks they'll appreciate it. She's already pegged him as a habitual criminal, which means we'll be solving a problem for them. As Dax and Sisko head through the wormhole, Odo's trying to find out more about Dark Helmet from Quark, specifically if he mentioned anything about other Gamma Quadrant species. He doesn't get very far, partly because Quark still insists he barely knew the guy, but also because Odo's called back to his office. A live twin is there with some mates, and he's in a lynching mood. He buggers off after being threatened with a cell, though I doubt that's the last we'll see of him. Dark Helmet has been fed at least, though his meal of yellow and beige doesn't look particularly appetizing. He holds up his end of the bargain, of a sort, by drip-feeding enough information to keep Odo interested. It ends with him saying he knows where to find some changelings, probably, anyway, but that it's impossible to find without him. That's convenient, and Odo assumes he's full of shit, until he produces a locket containing a purple something that changes shape. The mega-shuttle with Sisko and Dax aboard has arrived at Dark Helmet's planet. An initial attempt to call them receives no response until Sisko mentions a murder and Dark Helmet. That gets them very interested indeed, and they want him back. They're really rather insistent on it, in fact, saying he's a proper wrong'un who done lots of bad shit and was convicted in his absence. Sisko doesn't like it, but agrees to bring him back here out of respect for their rules, which is pretty fucking ballsy when Dark Helmet is technically a Bajoran prisoner, but let's ignore that for now. The end result is that we said we'll be back in 2 days with the prisoner. Odo may not like that news. He's had Bashir check that polymorph locket, and we've learned it's kind of alive. That's a good enough answer to have Odo chat with Dark Helmet some more, a conversation that tells us he found it in some space fog, the titular VORTEX to be exact. But that space fog has millions of rocks in, and only he knows which one has changelings on. That's going to leave Odo with a choice. Sisko's returned and wants him to be the one who escorts Dark Helmet back to his planet. He also says the Bajorans agreed to release him, so a point to the writers for answering my earlier concern. A live twin will probably have something to say about the transfer if he finds out about it, and his ship is faster than a mega-shuttle too, so we'd best keep it quiet. It looks like we managed to get away without being noticed, and that means Dark Helmet has time to work on Odo. It's a twin-pronged assault, firstly to alienate Odo from the people he knows by pointing out their differences, then to claim the crimes he was convicted of were because he killed the government agents who broke into his home and murderized his wives. Odo tells him to shut the fuck up, though he's not entirely comfortable with how things are going. There's discomfort back on the station, too. A live twin has discovered that Dark Helmet is gone, and believes Quark has him stashed somewhere as they're working together. A threat to kill him is sufficient motivation to help, and one of his secret hacking cylinders brings up the data. To his credit, Quark tries to pretend he's struggling to find out what happened. Unfortunately, a live twin is able to see for himself and buggers off to give chase. Rom's happy that it'll solve 2 problems for them in one go by killing Dark Helmet and Odo together, though Quark acts far less pleased with the probable outcome. Odo's course to Dark Helmet's home is taking him past the space fog previously mentioned. Dark Helmet tries to make him go through by saying it'd be a shortcut, but Odo resists. Bugger all of that though, as a live twin has turned up. A warning shot is followed by a warning call: give up Dark Helmet or die. Odo takes option 2, though he's going to try and delay it for as long as possible. The problem is that flying ships isn't part of his skill set, and less so when somebody's trying to kaboom them. Dark Helmet says he can fly them through the space fog, rendering them invisible to pursuers, and Odo's only other realistic choice is getting exploded, so he agrees. We can't move very fast through the fog, as it's full of gas pockets that'll kaboom if we give them a reason. A shame, then, that a live twin is still shooting at us, able to track the path left by our engines, says Dark Helmet. He thinks the safest course of action would be to land, and what better place than the asteroid he's been talking about all this time. They land and go for a little explore, which is impressive when even asteroids big enough to be dwarf planets don't tend to have atmospheres or enough gravity to stop you from floating away, but let's ignore that for now. Dark Helmet is in quite a rush to get where he's going, and that makes Odo realize this whole thing smells of bullshit. He gets a bit handsy, and Dark Helmet admits the story about a colony was bollocks. It's not a total loss, though, as his people do genuinely have legends about changelings. The locket is genuine too, such things being sold by space merchants, so that's a potential lead as well. The locket is also more than it appears. He says it's a key to something in the cave, and that something is his daughter in a stasis pod. She's all that remains of his family, the one killed by the government of his planet, and she's pleased to see him when he wakes her. Dark Helmet explains that Odo is here to take her somewhere safe, albeit without her father, who has to go back home. Either what he said earlier was true, or she's been well trained, as she backs him up about just trying to defend his family. Bugger all of that though, as a live twin is here and has started kabooming shit. A rock knocks Odo unconscious, raising some questions about how that would work and what the result would be, but for now he's on the floor having a nap. Dark Helmet grabs him, after a little hesitation and some prompting from Daughter Helmet, and carries him back to the Mega Shuttle. They take off, apparently avoiding a live twin in the process, and Odo awakes to find himself a bit surprised that he wasn't abandoned. If he was expecting to die, a live twin might be able to provide as he's back and pooping. That gives Odo an idea, and we pilot the Mega Shuttle close to one of the kaboomy gas pockets mentioned earlier before cutting the engines. A live twin gives them a call, perhaps thinking this is a prelude to surrender, only for Odo to tell him he can eat a whole barrel of dicks. A live twin doesn't take kindly to this and starts to fart out a firework, from the middle of his ship, by the way, despite Dark Helmet telling us they were charging up the starboard launchers, just saying. Odo puts his boot down and scarpers as the attempt to fire ignites the gas, the resulting kaboom turning a live twin into dead twin too. That only leaves us with completing a delivery, and Dark Helmet asks Odo to take care of his daughter when he's gone. He thinks Odo could do with the company, regardless of what he claims. The universe has different ideas, though. A Vulcan ship here to poke around the Gamma Quadrant noticed all the kabooms and came over to check. Odo tells them that a ship was destroyed inside, but that he managed to collect 2 survivors, who'd be very happy to go back to Vulcan with them. If the captain of the Vulcan ship wonders why they'd want to go back to her planet rather than their home, she chooses not to ask and instead accepts the request. Odo tells Dark Helmet that he'll bullshit something about him having been killed on the asteroid if anybody asks. Dark Helmet's planet probably won't be impressed, but they were dickheads anyway, so fuck 'em. As thanks, Dark Helmet gives Odo the locket before he and his daughter teleport away. Odo sets a course for the wormhole, apparently having decided he can't be asked to let Dark Helmet's planet know after all, and we'll leave him to have a conversation with a key, until the next adventure. First things first then, we have some bullshit numbers in this one. When Dax and Sisko first went through the wormhole back in Emissary, Dax said the closest star was about 5 light-years from the wormhole exit. Now, we also heard that star didn't have an M-class planet around it, but let's be generous and say either another less hospitable planet in the system is Dark Helmet's home, or that his star system is an equal distance away. Regardless, 5 light-years is the minimum. When Sisko reaches Dark Helmet's planet and agrees to hand him over, he says he'll be back in 52 hours, which means the wormhole is a maximum of 26 hours away because he needs to get there and back again, a hobbit's tale. The ship he's in has a maximum speed of Warp 5, and Warp 5 for 26 hours will cover a little over half a light year. Either we've found a planet that was hiding from Dax in the pilot episode, or O'Brien's been fucking about with the engines on that mega shuttle, cause you'd need to go a touch over Warp 9 to cover 5 light-years in a Bajoran day. I know I said during our Voyager reviews that I was going to take it easier on the number bollocks because, well, it all gets a bit tiresome, but this is the first one I've noticed in Deep Space Nine, so it gets a call out. To the bulk of the episode then, and the most important part is a glimpse at Odo's backstory. Well, sort of. We get some possible data, but it's both nebulous and provided through rumour and legend, all of which serves to make it unreliable if we want to change things in the future. I'll leave the viewer to decide which of these they think applies to what's coming, as you could argue at least one of them is a judgment call. What's not up for debate, though, is how well Odo fought false hope, refusing to be seduced by the promises of Dark Helmet even when they were on the very asteroid itself. We could argue that stems from one of the things we were told, a distrust of other species. Whether that's instinctual or the result of his experiences is another matter. Spending years around cardigans probably didn't help, and neither would some things that we're to discover later. Regardless, it reinforces Odo as someone who'll put what he thinks is right ahead of his own interests. The ending of the story serves to repeat this yet again, him still choosing to do what he thinks is right for someone who'd lied to him about the most personal part of his life. I wonder if having the physically changeable character be the most psychologically unyielding was a deliberate juxtaposition. A final note then on Quark's behaviour in this one. As he's retrieving details for a live twin, he's deliberately hesitant and tries to obfuscate matters even while under direct threat himself. This, and his reaction to Rom after, is another nod to the weird but enjoyable rivalry he has with Odo. That he's willing to place himself in even the slightest danger is high praise indeed from Quark, and a good example of the complex nature of the characters and interplay that make them such an enduringly memorable pair. End of episode.
Look, I've said I'm sorry, but I really don't know what else I was supposed to do. I've been storing it up for as long as I could, but eventually there's only so much willpower can do in the face of biological needs. I'm sure they'll understand.
Oh, of course they will. We fly around their station menacingly for ages, tell them we are going to land, fail and nearly crash, get pulled in by a tractor beam, have the ship we were in disappear.
I thought we weren't going to mention that.
Shut up. My point is we've already got a situation that could be most charitably described as diplomatically complicated. Piles of shit around the docking bay probably isn't going to help mend bridges.
Actually, shit can be a pretty versatile construction material, but I get your point. Hold up, someone's coming. I guess we'll find out one way or t'other. Woof.